So give me a little bit of background on your company. You're a patent agent. For those who don't know what that is, please let us know.
Well, yeah, I started Quick Patents in 2005. I'm a patent agent, which means I am an engineer that's passed the patent bar exam, just like a patent attorney. But the difference between a patent agent and a patent attorney is we don't have a law degree. So essentially, we can only practice law in this one little area called patent prosecution, where we represent clients to the patent office. So I can do everything that a patent attorney can do at the patent office with regards to patents. I'm just not able to take it beyond the patent office, for example, in the court and sue somebody for patent infringement or something like that.
And who wants to do that anyway?
That's right.
All right. So, and then why did you start the company?
Well, I'm an inventor myself. I've been inventing since I got out of college in 1990, and I had some ideas that I was kicking around, and so I started down the normal path of working with patent attorneys and so forth. And I had a really good patent attorney in California, but it just left a bad taste in my mouth with all of the, you call for 15 minutes and you get another bill for $75. And it was just a lot of, it was hard to figure out what my expenses were going to be with patents. And so when I became a patent agent, I just wanted to have a different type of practice, one that I would want to use. And so we have all flat fees for our services. And I think we're a lot more reasonable than attorneys. I think we don't have quite the overhead that they do. And so patent agents in general, you'll find are, I think, less expensive than attorneys.
And when do you think a new inventor should differentiate between an agent and an attorney?
Well, if you need to do something legally in court against a competitor, or write a cease and desist letter, or even do a legal agreement like a licensing agreement or some kind of even an NDA, this is technically a legal agreement. So when you need that kind of help, and also trademarks. They don't let me do trademarks at the patent office. They consider that the practice of law. But anything else with regards to patents, I think it'd be a good idea to look at both attorneys and agents.
Interesting. I'll be honest, I did not really know that there was that differentiator between the two. I had really never thought about it. And it's really funny that they draw a line between trademarks and patents.
Yes. Well, and it is funny. I know a lot about trademarks, but I don't know everything. And I think that's probably okay that patent agents can't do trademarks. There is no such thing as a trademark agent. So it can be tricky sometimes when you get into the details of trademark law. So I'm okay to specialize in patents. That's what I enjoy anyway. I love working with new inventors and new inventions. And I always just have to refer people out for trademarks.
Got it. Okay. And just so our listeners know, you and I talked about this on the discovery call. Not that we're here to promote your business by any means. You're not paying to be on the show. I just want to help our listeners. But it's interesting to note that you guys can generally, agents do this at a lesser cost, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important for people to think about that. Now, a lot of our inventors, they're thinking worst case scenario. They're thinking 10 steps ahead. They're thinking about how many times they're going to get sued and how they're going to defend it in court. And they're playing that reel in their head of what that's going to look like. But from my experience, if you're going into the patent world with the intention of defending it, you're probably in the wrong mindset. You should probably be focusing more on let's get the patent done. Let's hope that it's appropriate, but let's think about our go-to-market strategy. What are your thoughts on that, Kevin?
Yeah, a lot of times I hear that, a patent is only valuable if you have the millions of dollars to defend it and, arguments like that. So why even do a patent? But I think that's true, but only for a small percentage of the people that wind up in court. Out of all the patent applications that get submitted in the United States, maybe 65% of the utility patents get issued as patents. And then out of all of the patents that get issued, not all of them make it to the market. And then the ones that make it to the market, not all of them get copied, and so on and so on. So you get down to the point where there's actually very few lawsuits on patents that actually make it all the way to court, because very often people will settle, or they'll just assume that your patent is valid. I mean, that is the assumption when the patent gets issued. It's assumed to be valid. And you have companies like Amazon and Walmart who are, they're not interested in infringing a patent by selling some counterfeit goods. So they have processes that allow you to have competitive listings removed without going to court, and so that's a lot less expensive. And there's also some marketing, maybe some marketing advantage for being able to say patent pending or patented. So there's more reasons than just, you shouldn't think that you're always going to end up in a lawsuit just because you file for a patent. That's much more the exception than the rule. And I think there's other benefits of having even just patent pending that a lot of people, might not be thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had a few experiences with that, with using the prowess of a patent to further my product. One interesting note is that when I went and sat with the buyers at O'Reilly Auto Parts, never once did they ask about a patent. But I was on I was on a sales call earlier today with a small customer. He wanted a $2,000 order for his 4 freight trucks. And for some reason, when I mentioned the word that we secured the patent, a year and a half ago, that just tickled him. That just made him feel warm inside. And he thought, well, then this is the guy I got to work with. He's the only one with a solution to my problem. It can be beneficial.
You have perceived ownership of the idea when you have a patent, and anyone who knows how to really dig in and read the patents, can kind of quickly find out what that patent actually covers. It may look like it covers the whole hill, but it turns out it only covers a portion of the northwest side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be a little bit wise about how you read those. But yeah, I think in the market, a lot of times it's perceived ownership, and it's the perception is that you're the guy that they have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I want to get into the first question. Now, these questions come by way of Discord. To you listeners, you've heard me talk about the Discord. If you want to get connected to the Discord, that's through the Patreon. $6 a month connects you to a lot of past guests, current inventors, and myself. So check out that link in the description. And this question comes from Randy, and I'm going to paraphrase because I read it last night, but he had a really good point. So, Randy, forgive me if I butcher this one, but Randy is a seasoned inventor. He hasn't, I don't believe he's secured any patents yet because he's taking his time with this particular product he wants to bring to market. He's talked to patent agents and patent attorneys alike, and he's running into a lot of inconsistency. Some agents will say, Randy, you're out of your mind for trying to do your own PPA, provisional patent application. Go fly a kite. You need to either pay us to do it or you're going to fall flat on your face. And then he runs into other agents or attorneys who say, yeah, this looks good enough. Just let us polish it up for a few $100 and we'll get it on its way. So the question, Kevin, is why is there so much inconsistency in information in a space that should be so straightforward and by the book?
Yeah, that is a good question. And I've heard all of the different answers to it. My take is, and it's kind of surprising sometimes to clients. If they want to write their own provisional and file it, I say, God bless you, do it. Here's what your provisional has to do. It has to explain to somebody how to make and use the product. So you got to explain how you make this product and then how you use it. And if you can do that in this provisional document that you're going to file, then that may well be adequate. Now, it may not be adequate. You may say something that turns out later to bite you, down 5 years down the road in court or something. But my take is I would rather have a possibly inadequate provisional filed early than a professionally written provisional filed too late.
I see.
And the reason is because we're on a first to file system in the United States now. Didn't always used to be that way. You could send a letter to yourself or have your inventor's journal and, prove that you were the first inventor, even if you didn't file the patent first. But now, as of 2013 and the Obama's America Invents Act, you got to be first to the patent office. They don't want to figure out, the patent office doesn't want to figure out, okay, who really invented this first? Let's do a big discovery process and figure that out. They just want to look at the timestamp on the document. Who got here first? And so because of that, it's put an urgency on filing. And that's why they, the provisionals are great, because you can do them yourself. And you pay $65 typically for the patent office. And now you have a filing date and you're legally patent pending. Now, that may not be an adequate document, but I'll tell you what, now take it to an attorney or a patent agent and say, here's what I filed. What do you suggest? Should we beef this up? Should we start working on the non-provisional right away? A lot of that just depends on your patent strategy and your timing. There's advantages and disadvantages of provisionals in the first place, which we should probably get into later. But I'm all for people filing their own PPAs, but here's the thing that most people don't do. Then I tell people, file your own PPA, but don't rely on it. You got to get another set of eyes on that thing to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Do you think that, see, when I filed my PPA, so I filed my PPA in 2021, right when I launched my website. I wrote it myself because I was under the impression it was kind of a formality. You want to get close, what have you. I get that we're digging into that now and how it could come back to bite us. The thing was, by the time I was ready to file non-provisional almost a year later, my invention had changed so much that the original PPA, really, I just kind of pretended it never happened. I don't even think we listed it. We sourced it in the non-provisional. Don't quote me. I really don't remember. But do you run into that where people's PPA is just a completely different version than what the actual patent ends up being?
Sure, yeah. In fact, I ran into that with my dad. He was a very prolific inventor. He had 35 patents.
Wow.
And he was working on a dental product, and so we filed a PPA. And then about 4 months later, because he's a tinkerer and he's always improving everything, he came up with some new stuff. And so we put the new stuff in the same PPA document. We just added it to it, and added some drawings, filed it again. And then we ended up doing it a third time. So he had 3 PPAs, and we referenced all of those in the non-provisional when we filed the non-provisional. And so that was, and you have to file the non-provisional still within the 1 year of the first provisional if you want credit for that. But that does bring up a good point, Grant, because if your original PPA was not anything like what you have now, you might not even want to reference it in your non-provisional. But hopefully you filed another couple provisionals in the meantime, because it's that filing date for that new matter that you invented 4 months later. That filing date is now the operative date. And you want that to be as early as possible.
Okay, so if an inventor files a PPA under the impression he's going to use bungee cord for the flexible portion, and 6 months later he realizes a steel spring is much better, he should go ahead and just file a new PPA.
Well, that depends on how you described it in the original PPA. If you described it as a spring mechanism or something very general, an elastomeric member, something like that, right? Then you're covering both bungee and springs. So that's kind of one thing you want to think about when you're writing this stuff, because what if that changes, right?
Yeah.
But let's say it was a little bit more significant of a change. Instead of a manual crank, you were going to use an electric motor. All right, that's a pretty significant change. So yeah, I'd file a second PPA on that one, and that doesn't mean that you necessarily forget about your first PPA. But remember, when you file your non-provisional, all the new stuff that you have in there that wasn't in your original provisional, that's going to get the new filing date of the non-provisional.
Okay.
So the provisional has to support the non-provisional, right? And so that's why I'm a fan of filing multiple PPAs as you're continuing to improve this thing, if you come up with a significant improvements on it.
And maybe I missed it, but if you file multiple, does it void all the PPAs before it?
No, the only thing that would void the PPAs before it is if you go past the 1 year.
Oh,
right. So if you file your first PPA on January 1st, your second PPA on March 1st, then you got to file your non-provisional application before January 1st of the next year, or that first patent, that first PPA application expires. And a lot of people don't realize what that means. When your PPA expires, you let a year go by or more than a year go by before you file the non-provisional, that application just disappears. It's as though it was never filed. No one's going to be able to look it up. They're not going to publish it. It's just gone. And so sometimes people will call me and they'll say, well, I filed a provisional 2 years ago, but it had expired. But now I want to, pick it up again. I tell them, well, okay, that provisional from 2 years ago, it's gone. Pretending like you never even filed it. Now, where do you stand?
yeah.
Well, you should file that PPA today.
Sure.
At the earliest filing date you can, and then you can maybe work on the non-provisional now that you're ready.
I just learned something new. That's funny. I never wondered what happens at the 1 year mark. If you get a slap on the wrist, say, it's nice try, but you don't come back again. But no, it just disappeared. No. That's hilarious. I gotta pivot for a minute because we need to talk about something a little bit more important than all these details, because it's rare that I get an opportunity to talk to somebody that has this much experience with inventing and patents. You said your father had 35 patents. You're an inventor too. You've got how many patents?
5 with my name as the inventor, over 3,000 with my name as the patent agent.
Okay. So focusing on your father's experience and you with your 5 patents, I'm going to ask a very pointed question. And there's no right or wrong answer, but I've been in the inventing space for 5 years now. So you can imagine I've thought about this a lot. I run an inventing podcast. I've brought a product to market. I've looked into licensing. So here's the question. What is the best way to make money as an inventor?
So that depends entirely on what you're capable of. And there's really only 2 ways to make money on a product. You can start making the product and selling it yourself, or you can license it to someone who's already in that business selling similar products. That's it. Now, a lot of people will come to me and they'll say, well, I want to just, get my patent and then sell it for $1 million. And that's not really practical, because the reason is that product has not been tested in the marketplace yet. No one knows what the value of that product is if you've just got your patent and you haven't launched it in the market. It would be like having a restaurant building that you own and it's sitting there and it's ready to go. You have a choice, right? You can hire cooks and develop the menu and do all of the stuff required to run a restaurant. And if that's a good location for a restaurant and it's successful, then you get the lion's share of the profit. The other choice is you lease it to Denny's or someone and you let them run the restaurant. And for that, you get a rent check, what in the invention world we would call a royalty check. And it's passive income and you don't have to do much for it. So I have clients that are just all across the spectrum. I have clients who are, maybe they're approaching 70. They do not want to start another company, right? They just want to get this thing in the market somehow. And so I tell them, well, look, probably a licensing deal is the best way for you, because if you don't want to go through the hassle of sourcing the products, getting it made, bringing it in from China or wherever it's being made, warehousing it, doing the sales, ultimately it comes down to whose responsibility is it to sell this product.
Yeah.
If it's your responsibility, you've started a company. If it's someone else's responsibility, they're a licensee.
So let's say for the average person, perfectly middle-aged 41-year-old man or woman, they have the most average amount of energy you can think of, average amount of acumen and experience. Should they license or venture?
Well, that also depends a little bit on the product, right? Because if the product is pretty simple to manufacture, relatively inexpensive to manufacture, and you can launch this thing with a Kickstarter, then, maybe give that a shot. But if this is a fairly complicated thing, like, it has electronic circuits or moving parts or whatever, that, manufacturing that, if you haven't gone through the manufacturing process yourself, that's not trivial.
No. Well,
and so part of that, I would say, depends on the product. But if you want to kind of dip your toe in the water of the inventing world, then maybe look at licensing it first.
And my issue is, I've done 61 episodes now, and on many episodes and in many forums and many different platforms, we've solicited to people, please tell us a successful licensing story. And it's like Bigfoot. Everybody knows somebody who has one, but no one's ever gotten, where are the bodies? So Can you tell me about any successful licensing stories and give me some numbers? Because that's the thing. People say, well, if it's complicated, then maybe just look at licensing. Well, of course I would look at licensing. Who doesn't want to make money while they're doing nothing? But sometimes getting to that licensing deal takes 5 years of marketing your product and yourself. Yeah. And then maybe when that day comes, finally you get someone to listen. It takes them 1.5 years to develop the product. And then we start looking at the real numbers. Maybe you got 2.5% of the profit, and the company's not showing profit for another 1.5 years on your product. So do you have any clarity on that or any positive stories?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, even with venturing, it's all fairly speculative, right? It's and coming up with a new idea is, it's exciting, and if you're an optimist, certainly you're going to think, oh, this is going to be great. But it is a challenge either way that you go. Now, I have clients who make a living on their licensing deals. They just sit around. They've got 3 or 4 of these licensing deals, and they just sit around and tinker in their garage. What a lifestyle.
Yeah.
But, I have other clients who've been very successful with making the product and selling them. Mm-hmm. So, but, I'll tell you, it's not most, right? It's out of 100 products that I see, maybe 15 to 20 get in the market. And why did the other 80 not? Well, maybe the inventor just didn't know how to make that happen, and that's that, or they ran out of gas on it, or they lost interest. I mean, that happens to me.
Oh yeah,
where I'm like, yeah, this was a good idea maybe 2 years ago, but now I'm thinking not so much. So so I mean, there's all different reasons why a product doesn't make it in the market. That's one reason I like Kickstarter, is because it tests, it gives you a read on the market. If people are willing to whip out their credit card and pay for a product that doesn't even exist yet, that says something. That says you might have a winner, And but when you launch your Kickstarter campaign, that's a public disclosure. So you got to make sure that your patents are in place before that, because otherwise certain timelines start kicking off, and you can lose your patent rights in certain countries, or even in the United States, if you don't do that right. So you just suck the fun out of the room again, Kevin. We're having so much fun talking about Kickstarter, and then patent agent Kevin comes in and says, "But remember." Oh, that's funny. I have seen a lot of and the other thing is with Kickstarter is, competitors are watching, right? So if you have a campaign that's doing gangbusters, mm-hmm. And it's 45 days or 30 days before that campaign closes, you've given your Chinese factories a 30-day head start on getting that product into the market. Oh no! Oh, listeners, cover your ears. Just cover your ears. I'm kidding. You're right. It's stuff. It's the obvious that we try to hide from ourselves, or that we try to hide from. But it is the truth. And that's why it's so important to be so intentional when you go into this. I'm telling you, if you have an invention idea, we see it all the time in Reddit. I'm sure you have, Kevin. I got an idea, but I got no money. What should I do? Where should I start? What's up with Kickstarter? What's up with this? Like, dude, if that's your attitude already, don't even start. Just go to your job, go home, eat dinner, kiss your kids, go to bed. This isn't for you.
But if you have an idea and you think, this is such a good idea that I can't sleep at night, and until people have this in their hands, I'm not going to be satisfied. And I'm willing to push it for years and years and years. If that's the feelings you're having, if this idea has been mulling over and roaming around in your head for more than a month, maybe more than, for me, it was 12 years, my idea was in my head. And I turned 30 and I looked on Google one last time and I said, that's it. I'm doing it.
Yeah, it's not there. Let's do something with it.
It's fair game.
Yep.
Okay, let's go into the next question because we're going on a tangent, which I love. I want to get to Eddie's question. Shout out to Eddie of the Rap Rabbit. Hey, Eddie, I know you're listening. I was on a film shoot yesterday in Sarasota, and I was setting up a podcast, very complex, in a location I had never seen before. And I pulled out your Rap Rabbits. For those of you who don't know, it stores, what are these cables called, Eddie? You know what I'm talking about. The heavy audio XLR cables. It stores XLR cables in a really easy to use spool and unwinds them whenever you're setting up your gear, your guitar, your amps, your podcast equipment. And everybody was so impressed. I plugged it in the machine, spooled them out to my microphones, plugged them into the microphones. Awesome invention. He just got, I don't know, umpteen cases of his product from China. He's doing the last refining. He's making sure they're just absolutely perfect because he wants 5 stars. I love that. And he's got a question now. So background, I think it's implied in his question, but he filed PPA himself and he's about to file non-provisional. And he's thinking about doing it himself, Kevin. He says in the Discord, hey, Grant, I'm happy to hear you're working on another interview. Perfect timing. I'm prepping to do my non-provisional myself this month. I'm considering doing it myself as I've already done extensive work on it for the provisional. First question, what pitfalls should I expect if I do it myself?
So the biggest issue with writing a non-provisional yourself, if you haven't done this before, is the claims. The claims are the legal part of the patent application. They're in the back, and they're not even complete sentences. They look like huge run-on incomplete sentences. And so if you haven't seen them before, they're a little bit difficult to read, certainly difficult to write correctly. I would, if you're going to do it yourself, using someone like me or a patent attorney or whatever is not an option. And I understand that happens. You absolutely have to get the book Patent It Yourself by David Pressman. It's like the Bible of writing your own patents. And he goes into detail on how to write claims. I also have a blog, maybe Grant, you can link to it later.
Sure.
A 3-part blog article that I wrote called How to Write Claims for the Average Joe. And I just go through a very simple exercise of how would I write a set of claims for a chair. And I just break it down. And the way I like to think about the elements of a claim are that the claim is not talking about the application or the use. Typically, the claim is talking about the physical structural elements of the product when we're talking about an apparatus type of patent. And so a chair might have, the horizontal seat portion A, and 4 legs projecting down from the seat portion B, and a backrest C. And so we just go through how to very simply claim that. And if your claim says, A and 4 legs B, then you got to look at that and say, well, would that cover a 3-legged stool? Right. And so you have to put your competitor's hat on when you're writing the claims and think, okay, how would I break this? And ultimately what the claims need to kind of be structured as is claim 1 is what we call your MVP, your minimum viable product. What is the simplest version of this thing that is that has no bells or whistles, no optional features? I just want the bare bones minimum version. And that might be even something you're not interested in selling, right? But remember, a patent is not a license to make and sell something. It's a license to stop someone else from making and selling something. So you want to put the minimum version in front of your competitor as a hurdle. Like if you take one element out of this thing that's in claim 1, it's no longer working, or it's no longer recognizable as your invention. So if you can get to that for claim 1, then all the optional features you add on as dependent claims below that. And if you don't know how to structure those claims, I would say that's what you're paying your patent agent or your patent attorney for, because it is, read some patents and see if you could do a patent search and on your product, and the patents that are the closest, read the claims and see if it looks like something you could emulate. That's the advice I would give. I think I think there's something to be said for having a professional write the claims. The rest of it is pretty much just describing, how to make and use the product like your provisional, and it has kind of the standard. They have the same sections. It's just the non-provisional has this extra section called claims, and in court later on, if it ever, God forbid, goes to court, man, that's what they're going to be tearing into, is those claims.
I see. And how much would it cost to do a hybrid approach where you find a professional to help with the claims?
Well, I don't know, because if we certainly don't do that, because there's liability issues. Like if we take on the task of writing a patent application and the claims, then we really have to own it. We have to own the whole thing. And what that usually means is I have to rewrite it. So basically starting from scratch anyway. I don't know, maybe you could find practitioners, patent agents who are out there who would, be willing to piecemeal it. But I know at least for liability reasons, I couldn't do that.
Well, you're not going to find a lot of roofers who will let the homeowner put down the underlayment before they put on the shingles, right?
Right.
Are design patents worthwhile for consumer products like gadgets, accessories, or is it better to stick with utility patents?
Great question. The short answer is yes, they can be. It depends a little bit on the product, of course. If you have, some kind of chemical product, then a design patent doesn't apply. You can't get a design patent on a beaker of liquid. So, but if you have a consumer product, an apparatus of some sort, they can absolutely help you. I have a number of clients who have been able to successfully get competitive products delisted on Amazon because of their design patents. Now, a design patent protects the way it looks, not the way it works. And a utility patent protects the way it works, regardless of what it looks like. And so the example I give to kind of understand the difference is sunglasses. If you have a pair of sunglasses that's got a unique style, it's got a cool look or whatever, but it works the same way as every other pair of sunglasses, then for that, you need a design patent. You can't get a utility patent on it because it works the same way as every other pair of sunglasses, right? So you only have the option of a design patent there. But on the other hand, if you were the first person to invent, say, polarized lenses, now for that, you'd want a utility patent. You want to protect the way those lenses are working to modify the light that's coming through the lens. And you don't care what the competitor's sunglasses look like in that case. If they're using polarized lenses, you want to be able to go after them. So that's kind of the example I give. And design patents are not mutually exclusive with utility patents. I've gotten both for the same product. It's just they protect different aspects of it.
I see. Now, how does international protection work? Do you need to file everywhere, or are there smart shortcuts like the PCT?
Okay, let's handle first the utility patent, because when people are talking about patents, most of the time they're talking about utility patents. If you did not publicly disclose your invention before you filed your U.S. patent, then you still have the rights to file your foreign patents, including the PCT, which stands for Patent Cooperation Treaty. You still have the rights to file your international applications for a year. So if you filed your non-provisional application today, you would have a year from today to file your international patents, including the PCT. Part of your strategy internationally has to do with, obviously, where are the big markets overseas, right? And the European patent is fairly attractive because that covers all of Europe, not the UK anymore because they Brexited. But
Yeah.
A lot of people will file in China just to be able to, stop things from happening at the source, right? If there's factories that are copying you. So a lot of that just depends on, where's the best place to file. And the problem is, under the Paris Convention, the 1 year deadline that we have to file our international applications, that 1 year goes by really fast.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to file in more than like one or two foreign countries after you filed in the US, then you should really consider the PCT, because the Patent Cooperation Treaty gives you an additional 18 months, so fully 30 months from your filing date in the US. And it gives you they also do the search that a lot of those countries will use. And so it kicks the can down the road when you have to file your what's called your national stage applications in those countries. And it may take you 2.5 years to figure out, gee, is it worth getting a patent in Brazil? I don't know anything about Brazil on the market, or Japan. The Japanese will latch on to products like crazy sometimes. And so, if you have the option of getting a patent in Japan and it's taken off there, then you should absolutely look at it. The equation that I tell people to look at, and this is a hard equation to answer, I know, but if filing the PCT and then later a subsequent national stage application in a particular country is going to result in more money to your bottom line because you're able to stop competitors in those countries and therefore your market share goes up, then it's worth doing. Okay, but that's a hard thing to figure out. And each country has its own, fee schedule. And, so generally I tell people, if you want to file in a foreign country, depending on if you have to translate it to their language or not, it's going to be between $4,000 and $5,000. The PCT application itself is about $4,000, most of that being the filing fees to WIPO, which is the government agency. So you got to do your math right, right? Because otherwise you'll be spending money. I've seen people spend too much money on foreign patents. Absolutely. They're not even in the U.S. market yet, and they're worried about foreign patents. So,
yeah, that's the thing. The U.S. market is so damn big, and I was guilty of it too. I thought, well, I'm already doing X amount of dollars. Now if I can get into Europe, I can add 22% to my bottom line. But it's not that simple, and you end up getting spread so thin that you're stepping over $1 to pick up a dime. There's a lot of work to be done in the U.S. Until your product is at the top of the listing on Amazon and appears first in every Google search in every which way, there's so many key phrases and tweaking you can do to make your product show up. Until you're in half of the major retailers, there's plenty of money to be made here. And at the stage that you're in, with not $1 in your pocket, don't ask me how I know, but going and spending 10 grand to try to cover a PCT in Australia and really have not seeing any gain or loss from the situation. It's just a thing that you did because you were scared. Focus on the U.S. That's my 2 cents.
Right. And that's really true if you're venturing it. Now, if you're licensing it and you license it to a company that's large enough, they may well want your foreign filing rights to be intact. But really, you gotta hustle up to get those licensing agreements done and make sure those licensing agreements give you enough money up front to either cover those costs or they agree to cover those costs in the agreement itself. And
once again, that's all speculation. You're leaving even more of a personal investment up to faith or in the hands and responsibility of other people who can sell your invention. I don't like being that disconnected from control. That's just me.
Yep.
Last question from Eddie. How much room is there to amend later if you realized you missed a variation of your product?
So that's a good question. And with utility patents, it really comes down to whether or not that different new variation would be considered what they call new matter, right? So if you just said, you had some kind of jacket innovation and maybe it's some kind of wireless thing for your earbuds and your collar or something, right? But the way the jacket closes is not that important. If you phrase it correctly, you would just say that your jacket has a front closure mechanism of some sort. And you give some examples, zippers, Velcro, snaps, other mechanical fasteners, right? And then if your variation comes up later, some new mechanical fastener they develop, some kind of weird buckle or whatever, that should be covered, right? Because it's just a closure mechanism. It's essentially equivalent. Now, if we're getting into the variations on what we call your point of novelty, the thing that makes your product unique, and if you don't describe that well in the original application, it's going to be difficult to get that in as new matter, because that you'll get a new matter rejection. The examiner is going to say, wait, you didn't have this in the original. You can't just add it. So that's where filing either another provisional, if we're talking about provisionals, or filing what's called a CIP, a continuation in part. Some people call that an improvement patent. Then you can add the new matter. But remember, the new matter gets the new filing date. So,
okay.
If you came up with this new variation and it's going to be what makes this thing sells in the market, it's very important, then yeah, you should probably consider the CIP.
Okay. Switching gears, patent examining agents. These guys are guys and gals, they're a very mysterious thing that we all like to imagine. Do they sleep hanging upside down at night? Can you shed some light on what goes through their minds, and should we hate them? Should we love them? Tell me your experience with them.
Yeah, so over 20 years, I'd say my experience has been mostly positive, right? They're mostly trying to help you get the most protection that you can get, but they don't want to look bad by giving you more protection than you should have had, and then that patent gets canceled later. So they're walking a tightrope, right? And so, but it's funny. I've seen all kinds. I've seen, the worst case scenario we had was an examiner who had a 0% allowance rate for 3 years. I mean, there's statistics packages you can subscribe to, which I do, that keep track of all of the examiners and try to rate them. And this guy literally had a 0% allowance rate. And sure enough, he rejected us every single time. And we eventually had to appeal it, and we won the appeal. I knew this thing was patentable. I mean, I wasn't going to tell my client, yeah, let's keep going because, I'm making money. That's not the point. The point is, this thing was patentable. It was a really cool invention, and dang it, he deserved a patent on it, and he thought so too. And so we went through the process, the steps you have to take. And the appeal came down in our favor, and we got that patent. We filed it in 2014, got it in 2021. It was a 7-year process. So sometimes these examiners do hang from the ceiling when they sleep, and it's just I just don't know where that guy's supervisor was. Where was the supervising patent examiner there? I think she had some of the blame there too, because she wasn't keeping track of what her people were doing.
Oh yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, but you can't. People always ask me, well, let's just change examiners. No, not that easy. They don't let you do that, because then everybody would want to change examiners, right?
Sure. Interesting. So it's kind of like the DMV, huh? You can get some decent ones. You can get some pretty bad ones. Yeah.
They are government employees, certainly, but they are also, very often you can get them, especially pro se applicants, people who file their own patents.
Yeah,
they're supposed to help you get at least one allowable claim if it's available.
I see.
Now, if you file the patent on a wheel, you're not going to get a patent on that, right? But if there's something that you can point to that says, hey, this is a physical structure in my product that no one's ever done before, and it has a benefit, you should be able to get the patent on that.
And how accessible are patent examining agents in the process if you're doing it yourself?
Yeah, you can call them. It's called an examiner interview. You have to set it up. Sometimes they want to see an agenda, so they kind of prepare ahead of time what you're going to talk about. It can be a two-edged sword, though, because sometimes if you're not knowledgeable about how the patent process works, you can say something to your detriment, right? You can give too much credit to the prior art, or you can say that, yeah, you're right, my product doesn't work this way, or so. And maybe that's not true, but once you say it, it's on the record, and they'll accept it as true if it helps, them close the case. Here's the thing: examiners are really concerned about the number of points they get in their biweekly, schedule, and they're graded on points. And points are how many patents did you dispose of? That means either got granted, allowed, or rejected. And so they're working to get those numbers up. And sometimes they're going a little too fast, right? They're just human. So it's interesting because we use former examiners to do the arguing on our office actions on utility patents. And so these are guys who worked 10 years at the patent office, and now they're in private practice and they work for me. And so they just have a really good sense of kind of sometimes reading between the lines on these rejection letters. Like sometimes they can see things I wouldn't be able to see just because they have the experience at the patent office. It's kind of like having an ex-IRS agent handle your tax audit.
Yeah, of course.
So that's kind of how we do it. And I think we've done a really good job with those, but you don't always get the patent. I mean, frankly, it comes down to how novel is the thing. And you might think it's novel and non-obvious and all the requirements, but if the patent examiner finds some prior art that's spot on, you're going to have a hard time getting that patent.
I see. All right, story time. So I have a friend who will remain nameless, and he or she filed their patent through an attorney 2 years ago. It's been patent pending for 2 years. The non-provisional, full-on patent, right?
Okay.
They receive back, it's called class action, right?
An office action.
Office action.
It's an action taken by the patent office, so an OA or an office action.
That's right. Either way, it sounds really official, but it basically just means, hey, nice try, but we need more clarity on this or that. So his attorney received the office action, told him, the client, and so he said, okay, how much is it going to be to send in the office action to make the amend to the issue? It was whatever it was. It was more than $2,000. So he pays another $2,000. So now we're $11,000 in on this patent. And 2 months later, another office action. And in this office action, they mentioned to him, you're really similar to this product right here. And the inventor, my friend, he takes a look at this patent in question, the one that's impeding him. And he goes, oh my God, is this my invention? This looks exactly like my product. How did this not get caught? Why are we even here right now? Almost 3 years into the process, $11,000 about to be 14, and we're just now discovering this patent, this issued patent that has expired, and this is now open source. And here we are. That's where the story ends, because I told him, open source. Now I don't know what to tell you. What do you think about that, Kevin? Who dropped the ball there?
Well, I'll tell you, it probably should have been picked up in the patent search if they did a patent search. I mean, I know attorneys that say, oh, don't bother with a patent search because they're going to reject it anyway, and we'll just fight that battle then. But the main reason for doing a patentability search is to find those exact things, the dead ringers, the things that are exactly like your product. That happened on my first product. I had an idea out of college, and I found a patent agent to do a search, and he did a search. He found the exact same thing patented 10 years before. And yeah, I was bummed, but on the other hand, I got to read what a patent would have looked like on my idea. It just didn't have my name on it.
That's right.
And so I was able to stop and not spend a lot of money. That's too bad about your friend. But patent searching can be difficult though, because it's not a science. It really is an art, and you want to use people who are experienced. And I think the best attitude for a researcher to have is if they haven't found something close, they keep digging, because it's like, I know this has got to be out here. That's when you, as a researcher, and I used to do 4 or 5 patent searches a day for LegalZoom back in the day when they were hiring me to do that. when I found the thing, I was happy.
Sure.
Because I knew I'd done my job. I found it. And then whatever the client wants to do after that, it's up to them, of course. But it's when you don't find it that you start getting nervous. Like, where am I not looking? I know this thing's out here.
Yeah.
So anyway, and that, we could talk about searches for another hour, because that's a whole different topic. But you want to find someone who's got experience, because you just do a Fiverr patent search for $50. Someone's going to do a couple keyword searches and call it a day, and that's not enough.
Yeah. So do you think it's within reason to ask for some kind of refund or something if his attorney was responsible for the initial patent search?
Well, maybe for the search fee, I think, it's, but the attorney did do the work. So that's a hard one.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up all the time we have for today. I have a camera in the corner that's probably about to die, so maybe we should sign off now. Thanks a lot, Kevin. Do you have any parting words of wisdom for our inventors?
Just one thing, the biggest kind of misconception is how to think about patent pending. When you file your provisional, your non-provisional, or even your design patent, you can legally say you're patent pending. And people say, well, does that mean I'm protected? No. I like to think of patent pending as a big no trespassing sign on a piece of property that you don't own yet.
Nice.
So what you're telling people is, hey, I beat you to the patent office. There's no reason for you to follow me because I'm presumably first in line, and you don't get anything for being second in line at the patent office. So, warning, don't try to copy me. But if somebody does set up a lemonade stand on this property, you have to wait until you own the deed to the property before you can legally evict them. So that's when your protection actually starts, is when you get your patent granted.
Makes sense. I like the analogy. Thank you for clearing that up. And thank you for spending an hour with me here today.
Grant, thank you. This has been fun, and hopefully it's been helpful for your listeners.
It absolutely has. I appreciate you, Kevin. I'm going to go ahead and hang up on you, and then I will close out the show. You and I will talk later, buddy.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.
Have a good
one. Bye. There you have it, folks. You asked, we delivered. Patents 101. That's more like Patents 105, 106, because you guys have been on this journey for a bit, right? And Eddie had the tough questions, and Randy, which I really appreciate. Remember that the main goal is selling this product, whether you're going to do it or someone else is going to do it. So in this journey of patenting, think about, does this impede my ability, or does this lift my ability to sell this product? And be careful with your money. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're listening, follow the show on whatever platform you may be on. And remember, Kevin and I took the punches so that you don't have to. See you guys on the next one.